DeJulius puts up a three. Yes! And goal!
Bearcat Blitz on this Friday, June 7th, 2024. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer. Things slowing down on the Bearcats athletic side of things, but we still got some stuff to discuss on this weekend starting show across the Believe Network. We are presented by Bet Online, your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action and use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online. The game starts here. Preview what we have upcoming on today's show. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Go to those feeds, subscribe, rate, and review. Help us grow the show there. And you can also subscribe to the YouTube page, Talking Cats with Russ Heltman, to see every show visually and through the audio medium as well. Football schedule. ESPN FPI has come out, Football Power Index, and the Big 12 has cupcake schedules all over the place for the outfits in this conference. Cincinnati with one of the easiest power conference schedules of any team in the country, leaving less and less of an excuse and a margin for error to have a below 500 record this season. We'll take a quick break and then kind of put a full bow on the basketball transfer portal cycle, I should say. Ranked top 25 across most major outlets. We'll get to those rankings to close the show. And we'll have Neil Meyer and all that's good stuff after these messages on Bearcat Blitz. ESPN Football Power Index is out, Neil, and we also, on the football side of things, have had some official visits happening. That's kind of the biggest news that we're going to get during this month of June on the football side of things is going to be those official visits. We'll touch on that a little later on in this segment, but kind of just assessing this schedule from the ESPN FPI ranks. Cincinnati checking in at number 14, the 14th easiest schedule in the entire country among power conference teams, looking to be about 6th easiest out of the 16 Big 12 teams that are going to be playing this season. 14 of the 25 easiest schedules belong to Big 12 teams, Neil, and that to me just kind of speaks to how much of a monopoly is growing on the major matchups and the big time talent kind of coalescing inside the SEC and the Big Ten, when you think about how much of those kind of easier schedules are sitting in the hands of the ACC and the Big 12. And for Cincinnati, I mean, Neil, there is very little excuse for this team to not exceed 5.5 wins, that betting win total out across almost every major metric. When you think about, they got 4 home games against teams ranked in the bottom half of Vegas odds for preseason to win the Big 12. 4 home games against ASU, Houston, WVU, and TCU. They have road games at Colorado, who's in the bottom half. And they actually, funny enough, I sent in our Bearcats group chat yesterday, they have the most bets on BetMGM to go over 5.5 wins, the Colorado Buffaloes do. And they have the most bets to go under 5.5 wins, just showing the polarization nationally for that Colorado outfit there. And they also have road games against the top half of the conference, and that's where it gets a little difficult when you look at the preseason odds going to Texas Tech, Kansas State, UCF, and Iowa State. But outside of those 4 road games, Neil, the rest of the 8 matchups are all very winnable, and you would expect them to win 1, maybe 2 of those tough road matchups out of the 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, I think it's clear to see based on this schedule that 5.5 wins is the over-under right now heading into the season. Russ, I'm right there with you. I think no matter what, it's basic. Looking off this schedule, it's basically you're looking down from week 1 to week 12, I believe it is. You're looking down and this team should definitely exceed the 5.5 win marks because you're looking at your first three, Russ. I mean, Towson to open the season at 2:30. Then you have Pitt, which Pitt was a decent matchup last year for those who remember. It's going to be a decent matchup this season again, but things are leaning towards the Bearcats' favor again. I mean, you have the home environment, and then you have the third week there, the Battle of the Victory Bell, and Scott Satterfield has clearly made it known that they're hoping to go up to Miami and bring that Victory Bell back to Nippert Stadium. In his latest interview with Adam Brenneman, for those who have watched that podcast, that was a great interview. So if you watch that, you could kind of see that that loss definitely stung, and that they are going to have all focus on bringing the Victory Bell back to Clifton. But the main goal in that interview, Russ, too, was they want to get to Dallas and play for a Big 12 championship. And in order to do that, you're going to have to go above 5.5 wins because you're looking at this schedule. Houston was at the bottom of the conference last season. That was their lone Big 12 victory a season ago. And then you have at Texas Tech, which will be hard because everyone knows traveling to Lubbock is hard. You travel to UCF, which everyone knows what UCF is like, but UCF will be a true test on the road, in my opinion. But then you welcome in an Arizona State team who was struggling a season ago. You go to Colorado, which no one really knows what to expect right now. I mean, they had the great start last year, and then they completely fell off towards after week 4, I think it was. And then you go welcome West Virginia. Iowa State on the road is going to be a true tough matchup as well due to the type of environment and everything that game is. But Kansas State, I think, Kansas State and TCU, Russ, I think, are your two toughest games on the schedule, and you don't get those until the last 2 games of the year. So heading into Kansas State and TCU, I would definitely expect to see them around that 5-win total heading into that one, maybe even above that 5, maybe looking at 6. But overall, I think, Russ, it's easy to say that they should be able to exceed expectations, especially with what they were able to do this offseason in the transfer portal and whatnot. I mean, you bring in the starting quarterback in Brendan Sorsby. You go out, you get more help at the wide receiver room, the tight end position. You bring in the offensive line depth, defensive line depth. Overall, it was a great transfer cycle for Scott Satterfield and the staff, in my opinion. I thought they addressed everything they needed to address. Yes, there's still some positions you wish they would have been able to grab a couple more, maybe quote-unquote higher-ranked guys, but the guys they brought in for a reason. They fit what they're trying to do. But I was pretty impressed with what we saw in spring, Russ. So for 5.5 wins, I think for me personally, I would say they exceed the expectations based on what this schedule would look like.
I'm definitely in agreement. I think they should exceed the expectations. And I think really one game may be the tipping point between 5 and 6 wins in this schedule, Neil. And that's the home matchup against Pitt. If they can win that game, I think they're fully set up to start 3-0. I mean, you shouldn't have much trouble with Houston at home on September 21st. They're ranked as the worst team by FPI in the Big 12. They were gutted through the transfer portal. They're starting a new head coach there as well this season, I believe. And so it's just, they should get that job done and start the season 4-0. That should be a 4-0 start for the Bearcats, seeing as you're pretty much neck and neck. They have a negative 0.8 FPI rating to Pitt's 2.2 or 2 FPI rating or 2.2, excuse me. So when you factor in home field advantage there with Nippert Stadium, that crowd, it should be pretty even matchup. I'd expect that spread to be about 3-4 points, maybe 2.5, 3 points in favor of Cincinnati on that front. So that's going to be the swing game for me, Neil. And it's just, there is not an excuse to put up less than 6 wins this year. There really isn't. Just given how much depth they've added. We talked about last year, they almost didn't use, they were close to double-digit unused scholarships in 2023. They have every scholarship taken in 2024. You've added around the edges in terms of your depth chart. And I'm just very intrigued to see whether or not FPI is correct in how they judge Cincinnati this season, have them ranked of the 16 teams in the Big 12, 14th out of 16th, Neil, going from top to bottom. Kansas at number 1, then Kansas State at number 2, Arizona at number 3, Oklahoma State at number 4, Utah at 5, Texas Tech at 6, TCU at 7, UCF at 8, West Virginia at 9, Buffaloes of Colorado at 10, Iowa State at 11, Baylor at 12, Arizona State at 13, and Cincinnati at 14th out of 16 Big 12 teams. they're not going to be competing for a Big 12 championship if that's where they end up slotting. But Neil, they could finish in the bottom 4, bottom 5 of the Big 12 and still go 500 this season, just given how easy all the other Big 12 conference schedules are, and how this conference may not get two, or it may only get one college football playoff participant this year, Neil, but it's going to have a pretty high floor at the bottom, I would think. Maybe maybe Houston falls off a cliff and that's your one really bad team. But I mean, BYU, I think, is also going to have a decent floor, ranked 73rd overall nationally, with Cincinnati at 65.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Russ. And let me ask you, Russ, looking at this schedule, is there any game in particularly that jumps off the page and say, okay, I'm most excited for this game? Obviously, this is a different conference slate than what we saw a year ago. You don't have the Oklahomas, don't have the Texases in the Big 12, but you get the 4 new additions. Me personally, Russ, I'm looking forward to that October 12th matchup and October 19th matchup, back-to-back weekends, because it's UCF on the 12th, Arizona State. There's a lot of Cincinnati connection between those two programs. Obviously, UCF, we saw Deshaun Pace go down there, Brian Threats, Miles Montgomery transfer to UCF, and Arizona State back-to-back. You have former Bearcat Justin Watley, Shimon Mateer out there. So you're going 2 straight games where it's going to be a lot of energy, in my opinion, between relationships with former players and whatnot. But those are the 2 games that stick out to me on this schedule. And one, UCF, that's a game, Russ, where if they could go and take one versus UCF, especially with what's riding on the lines there, playing against some former teammates, some of these guys have played with for 3-4 years, go on the road, win at the Bounce House. I think that could be a win that could really solidify a lot of movement for Scott Satterfield and this coaching staff. But overall, what game are you looking forward to the most on this upcoming schedule, Russ?
West Virginia. Welcome West Virginia back home after what they did to Cincinnati in 2023, just blew the doors off them in the first rekindling of the rivalry. That's easily what I'm most excited for. 42-21 loss. How do you respond to that coming back to Nippert Stadium? And a scenario, Neil, where at that point in the schedule, with only 5, or with that being one of the 4 remaining games to play, you could be fighting right in the thick for your bowl eligibility life. And that's going to be a great, maybe a game between 2 teams fighting for bowl eligibility in West Virginia and Cincinnati. So I'm looking at that one the most on the calendar. Speaking of the calendar, official visits happening across this month for Cincinnati Bearcats football. When we look at kind of just the big names that have been in town recently and big names that are going to be in town this weekend, I have my eyes set on a 5-star player who was just in town and actually may not be in town anymore. Brock Harris, 5-star tight end, 2026 talent, 24th ranked player nationally on 24/7 Sports, 3rd best tight end overall. He was in town for an unofficial visit this week. Also have Elijah Durr getting offered by the Cincinnati Bearcats. He is a 3-star cornerback on 24/7 Sports and got the offer after his visit to UC this past week. Paul Nelson, the local Princeton 3-star linebacker, close to a 4-star talent. He is on campus this weekend and taking his official visit. He has Cincinnati in his top 8 schools, would be a big-time hometown talent to keep in the middle of that defense. And then also Jordan Crutchfield was on campus this week. Cincinnati offered him as well, the Fort Pierce Westwood, Florida wide receiver, ranked 260th nationally and 23rd among athletes. He plays cornerback and wide receiver.
Yeah, and then you can't forget the ones who came last weekend. High or low 4-star linebacker Grant Bierman was on campus, a local Lakota West product. And then you have 3-star Cleveland offensive lineman Robert Smith was also in town for an official visit. But looking at the official visits right here and heading into this weekend, Russ, you have 4-star edge Cedric Works looking to take his official visit. 3-star commit Eric Gale will take his official visit this weekend. Big-time offensive tackle target Jaden Clark will be on campus this weekend. 3-star quarterback commit Zebulon Kinsey is taking his official visit this weekend. And then you have the 3-star interior offensive lineman Xavier Canales, 3-star offensive tackle Jim Harris, 3-star defensive lineman Derek Simmons, 3-star athlete Christian Neptune. There's a lot of talent coming through Clifton in the next few weeks for official visits, Russ. And then last weekend you had the 4-star Mikhail Skinner, the wide receiver out of South Carolina, was also in town for his visit. So overall, they're bringing in some high-quality guys, but it's going to be a busy week. It's going to be a busy week, and it's that time of year, Russ, where official visits are happening for this class of 2025. But as you mentioned, I think it's the biggest one was the 2026 5-star tight end and Brock Harris, who unofficially visited Cincinnati yesterday. And I mean, Russ, you said it earlier, 24th player in the class of 2026, 6'7", 240-pound tight end. And I mean, just watch the film. It's safe to say why he is one of the top tight ends in his class. But Russ, they're targeting some of the best players out there. Anytime you're able to get a 5-star to come to campus, even if it's for an unofficial visit and you get them on campus, it's you're doing something right. And Wes Miller on the basketball side said the same thing. So overall, it's that time, Russ, and it's going to go quick. So a lot of recruiting updates hoping to come. We've seen the tweets from the coaching staff on some potential hints at what might be happening. So might have some news for you here on the forefront within our next episode for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't Brock Harris, it's exciting, people, but I wouldn't get your hopes up too quick at all under any circumstance.
40 offers already, including Alabama, LSU, Miami, Auburn. The list goes on, but anytime, like we said, Russ, anytime you can get that kind of talent,
it's never bad that he visited, but given where he was in recent days, it's not like he went out of his way to come from Utah to Cincinnati. State. He was in Michigan. He was at Michigan State this week. He was at Michigan this week, and he was at Ohio State this week.
And I think he went to Cincinnati and Ohio State all in the same day too. So he's doing a big tour this offseason, doing a lot of camps, doing a lot of unofficial visits from what it looks like. And I mean, hey, anytime you can get that opportunity to go,
it's not a bad thing for sure. Not a bad thing.
Many schools, it's not a bad thing. But anytime you can just get them on campus, especially right now, Russ, a good time to get those talents on campus, because the biggest thing you can pitch right now is $135 million indoor practice facility. So that's
It'd be nice if that thing was built.
Yeah, imagine if it was already finished right now, pitching that. But hey, that's one thing that they are pitching. I can tell you that they're pitching the new practice facility. And anytime recruits see, $135 million practice facility. Obviously, Russ and I have seen the renderings and what it's supposed to look like, and I'm sure everybody else has at this point. But that's something that you could be able to pitch, and it's going to draw some talent to Cincinnati in the near future, to say the least.
1 4-star commit in the class of 2024 and 2025 so far. Bearcats fans and people that are looking for the talent base to continue elevating, still wanting more, still waiting to see more. Obviously, a big month ahead for the class of 2025. A ton of commits over the month of June and July historically in this window. So the class of 25, which currently holds just 9 hard commits, we could be seeing a balloon up to 15, 16 by the end of this summer. And you can make a real full assessment then of whether or not they have added enough talent to make you feel confident that this coaching staff, this recruiting staff can lift Cincinnati from the basement of the Big 12 to at least just get them competitive at this point. Just get them competitive. And then we could talk about where the basketball team is going to be entering going into this season, where it's not just competitive for Wes Miller's crew after they wrapped up their transfer cycle. We're talking NCAA tournaments. We're talking top 20 rankings, and we're talking potentially a tournament run for the first time this decade for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball. First tournament appearance would be great for Bearcats basketball for the first time this decade. Wrap up the show after this break on Bearcat Blitz. Neil, getting to the kind of wrap up on our basketball transfer portal cycle. Top 25 class transfer-wise nationally, really any way you slice it. We'll start with the Evan Miyakawa ranking, which has Cincinnati ranking 8th nationally by average incoming transfer ranking, 3.7 average Bayesian performance rating for their players, namely Arrington Page, Dylan Mitchell, and Connor Hickman. That's 5th in the Big 12, and I would say I probably have them right about there in the pecking order, Neil. 5th to 6th in the Big 12 right now, depending on where you want to slot some of those kind of just below the top tier of the conference teams. It's going to be a dogfight throughout the season, and a dogfight that Cincinnati is looking pretty well equipped with their additions to handle. 25th nationally on 24/7 Sports overall transfer team rankings, and 22nd nationally on the On3 rankings. Wes Miller's done it, Neil. He has brought in the talent. He has the coaching acumen He has the coaching staff aided by Tim Buckley, the shot doctor, coming in to maybe make a jump shooter out of Dylan Mitchell. We'll see. He didn't hit a shot outside of 16 to 22 feet last year. So many different things to be excited about. And really, it just feels like, Neil, if they get any modicum of decent health luck, this team's going to be dancing. This team's going to be dancing into the second weekend, I would guess. And they're a dark horse with the Dan Hurley news populating right now and UConn potential. I would say they are definitively the number one team in the country going into the 24-25 season. All those players will be able to transfer out immediately and scatter across the country if Dan Hurley takes this Lakers job, which we will know for a fact if he does or not by the time we do our next show. Things are just getting more and more exciting by the day for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Russ, I mean, nobody knows what may happen with Dan Hurley, the speculation of going to the Lakers or whatnot, but it's a great thing you mentioned that because definitively UConn is the number one team on papers, back-to-back national champions, going to be number one heading into the 2024-25 season. Everybody knows that. But if Dan Hurley does elect to go to the Lakers, they will have 30 days to transfer. So never know what could happen if that is an option that Dan Hurley elects.
Without Dan Hurley, they're not the number one team in the country.
Exactly.
He's one of those rare coaches where it's like adding a superstar transfer when you have Dan Hurley on the bench.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I think it's going to be a crucial offseason for Wes Miller and them. Obviously, you see what they're bringing in. They're getting the national attention there, top 25 transfer rankings. But me personally, Russ, I am super excited to see what Tim Buckley will be able to do with guys like a CJ Frederick if he can stay healthy, a Dylan Mitchell, a Day Thomas, a Jizzle James, or even a Simas Lukosius Dan Skillings. Like, we talked about it plenty of times, Russ. If Dan Skillings could, the projection for him this season, if he can get that three-point shot above 32% roughly, compared to where he was last season, I believe he finished close to 29. If he can get that three-point shot more efficient, down to the 32, 34% range, I think that's the spot they want him to be in. But overall, I'm really excited for Tim Buckley. Russ, you add a guy who is known to really develop a great, pure elite shooters during his time at Indiana and Marquette. So overall, and South Carolina. So I'm really excited to seeing how Tim Buckley will come in and handle this offseason. But Russ, as you mentioned, it's going to be interesting this offseason. It's going to be a fun season to cover, with the floor being the NCAA tournament. Everyone knows the ceiling of this team and what they have on paper right now. But as you mentioned, Russ, if they could stay healthy, that's the big thing. You stay healthy, this team could go past the second weekend in the NCAA tournament and be capable of potentially making some noise in the Big 12, top 4 finish, and maybe even have a chance to win the division, obviously, or win the conference. Obviously, Kansas right now, you see how El Marco Jackson goes down with an injury in the offseason. So Kansas is already battling injuries. So you hate to see that. But right now, I mean, if Cincinnati can stay healthy, I think that's one game in particular they might be able to go in and make some noise and steal another big win like they were able to last year.
Dylan Mitchell, can Tim Buckley take his offensive game to another level? That's the biggest storyline for me this offseason is how does Tim Buckley, how does this staff elevate these talents to another level from what they entered UCS? 7 of 38 on jumpers last season, Dylan Mitchell was. He did not attempt, he missed all 8 of his three-point shots. If they can turn Mitchell into a 40% shooter, which is, I guess, probably saying a lot, they're probably asking a lot given where he's starting at. I mean, it's just the versatility is off the chain. The depth chain. I'm with you. It's going to be so much fun. Summer workouts already starting to roll with everybody in tow except for Day Thomas. We'll be getting him back in full slate of action, hopefully by the end of June, definitely by portions of July. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a three. Yes!